Well, what's going on, everyone? Calico, your obsession with pineapple on pizza amazes me. And I just realized that, oh no, chat box is there. That's weird. It's not popping up on the actual stream, but that's okay. When I post this to YouTube, all of 2 people that watch it will be slightly confused. But welcome to the stream, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, as always. Well, we're starting a new mini. So we finished up the Minotaur last session, I guess you could say. I think it turned out great. As always, I posted pictures on my Discord as well as the Trials of Imagination Discord for all of you who are mutuals there. And threw up a couple miniatures for everyone to vote on as far as what we're going to be painting next. And if you would like to be a part of that vote, go ahead and join the Discord. Link should be down below. So yeah, there was a close vote there for a second. So before Stormtrooper chimed in, the vote was between the Buccaneer Lady and what is that thing called? I can only think of Xanathar now, thanks to lava. But it was a Beholder. So those are the 2 choices. They were both tied before we had one tiebreaker. And so today we are going to be painting the Buccaneer Lady, which I think is just an amazing sculpt, an awesome looking miniature. I'm really excited about getting to paint it. Again, another Loot Studios 3D print. I think it turned out really nice. There are some really amazing detail on this miniature that I can't wait to paint. Some really good opportunities for things like non-metallic metal and stuff like that. So one of the things that I want to try with this is a lot of the times, yes, another pirate, but the first one was a skeleton. So that's the big difference. So this one is not a skeleton by any stretch of the imagination. But one of the things that I find myself getting into as far as like a trap is very often I use a more muted palette. And so for this, I'd like to actually come out and do a bit more of a brighter palette than I would normally. So with this, the plan is to make her jacket red. So very similar to kind of a Captain Hook style color. I do end up using a lot of reds, but that's just because I like the color red and I like the color blue. We'll go with a bit of more of a complementary style paint job with her. So we'll go with maybe some greens and maybe some aquas or teals or something like that on some of our secondary colors. And then of course our tertiary colors are going to be things like browns and for the leather, gold, silver for all the non-metallic metal and things like that. So that's the plan. But as we all know, especially when it comes to me and miniature painting, plans change every 5 seconds. So that's what we'll start off as, and we'll see where we go later. So first things first, let's go ahead and get our palette ready. So I'm going to be starting base coats of Corn Red by Citadel. Corn Red is a nice dark red color that I like to use for a lot of my shades and base coats and things like that. So first things first, yeah, I said I want to go with bright colors. I don't want to go gaudy. The thing with bright colors is it's very, very, at least for me, it's very easy to go from gaudy or from tasteful to gaudy very, very fast. And so I tend to avoid brighter colors a little bit more than say my muted palette, because with a muted palette your blacks, grays, browns, tans tend to go together a little bit easier than say like bright reds, teals, blues and things like that. But we'll see where we go with this one. I'm not really used to doing bright colors, and in the past when I have done bright colors, it's always just ended looking like a bunch of primary colors slapped onto a mini, and I want to avoid that with this one because I think this sculpt deserves a really nice paint job. And y'all have heard me talk about this in the past. I love finding sculpts and miniatures that are female that are not overly sexualized. And I think Loot Studios did a fantastic job on this particular one with making it not like pinup, I guess you could say. It's a very well done sculpt and a very well done miniature. So it's good so far. Work was work, as always. We have some very interesting stuff happening in our company right now. We're growing rapidly. And a lot of changes are happening, and with change and with growth comes growth pains. So we're hitting a little bit of that, but you know what? It's really good. It's stressful, but it's a good kind of stress, knowing that everything you're doing is going to pay off in the end. We're a fairly small company, so a lot of the growth is being absorbed by a bunch of different teams who wouldn't necessarily be handling that kind of work. But it's exciting. It's exciting to be a part of and exciting to watch. But yeah, so just everything that goes with that, kind of trying to do all that kind of stuff while still maintaining my normal responsibilities. So yeah, that's pretty much work in a nutshell. How about y'all? How has your day been? What have you been up to? Is it just me, or I'm wondering if my camera is a little bit janky, because I keep, like, for whatever reason, whenever I'm painting, I tend to like find the camera that's on my face instead of actually keeping this centered. I don't know what it is. It's kind of weird. Yeah. I feel like, though, every time you and I talk, I feel like you purposefully, like, go out and order a pineapple pizza just to be like, ha 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 ha, Stormer's gonna hate this. Ooh, okay, well, it's better than most movies, I guess. To be honest, like, it's weird. The Hobbit was one of those movies that I personally really did not enjoy, mostly because I really enjoyed the books. Now obviously there was a lot changed in the Lord of the Rings trilogy from the books, but I feel like the Hobbit was a little bit stretched, because with the Lord of the Rings they had to condense it so much that they really only put the most important bits in. But with the Hobbit, they've stretched one book into 3. Again, it has its moments, and it's definitely not a terrible movie. But in my personal opinion, I definitely prefer the Lord of the Rings trilogy a little bit more. But again, still has some really good moments. Like, I think, what's his name that played Bilbo absolutely knocked it out of the park. And of course, any scene with Gollum in it is going to be amazing. And I think they did Gollum really well in that movie. Like, the scene, Riddles in the Dark. Oh, so well done. Okay, so gotten our base coat done. Not sure what I'm gonna want the inside of her cloak to be as far as the color goes. Maybe just like a white or an off-white. But while we wait on that to dry, what I want to do is go ahead and start on her eyes. Now normally I do eyes last because they're pretty much the hardest part of the miniature. But the one thing that I've learned is that even though they're the hardest part of the miniature, oftentimes if you do it last and you mess up and you've already done things like the face, what in the world? My brush is bubbling. I don't know if y'all can see that, but little bubbles are coming out of the tip of my brush. That is weird. I've never seen that happen before. Huh. Interesting. So anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit the eyes and then do around her eyes and her face first, and then we'll move on to the rest of the miniature. So for her skin, I'm thinking I'm just gonna use my standard skin tone that I use for a lot of my miniatures, mostly because number one, I'm decent at it. No, it's not a new brush. This is a brush I've used for a while. It's made by a company called Artist Opus. I've used it in all of my other, literally every single one of my other streams I've used it, so I'm not sure why it's acting all weird and bizarre. So I think I'm just gonna go with the normal Caucasian style skin tone, but I might add a little bit of extra texture to it by, I think I did this last time on the Wizard, but with the Wizard I kind of covered up a lot of what I did with the, no, I didn't, a lot of what I did, almost everything that I did with the light source. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a little bit of red to it, to the skin tone, to give it more of a pinkish color for my base coat. And this is just gonna add a little bit of flavor and texture. It won't necessarily look realistic, but I think it'll add some nice shade and shadow to it. So as far as her hair, what color are we thinking on hair? Because I want it to be kind of complement the colors that she's wearing. But at the same time, I don't want to be like, oh, she's wearing red, so obviously a redhead. But at the same time, I don't want to go super generic and just be like, yep, we're going to go like raven black hair. Yeah, I was thinking blonde, but I'm not exactly sure how that would look with the rest of the colors I'm going to be using for this, because for once I actually mapped out the colors I'm going to use, which is bizarre, with the exception of her hair color. I'm trying to think, there's a couple marks here on her hand. I'm not exactly sure if that's like a hand wrap or if it's a scar or something. I'll probably paint it as a scar just because I'm not really sure what it is. She has it on her other hand too, almost like gloves. Yeah, I think that's what they're supposed to be. Because just looking at the other hand, it definitely looks like she's wearing some sort of glove. So we'll flavor that like gloves then. Oop, there is a little bit of compartment to your left here, so I'm just going to take my clippers and grab that. But as far as hair color, I think that'll be one of those things that I fly off the cuff and just do. I'm thinking maybe blonde is going to be. So I think the inside of the cloak is going to be white or off-white. But yes, my intention is to paint the inside of the cloak. It's going to be a pain to get to because a lot of it's blocked off. But yes, we're going to go like a nice off-white color for the inside. So we're almost going like royal, British infantrymen or something like that for the actual cloak. So that kind of color. So we're going red, gold, and off-white. I think that's all the skin for a base coat. So let's go ahead and go back over the eyes. Or not over the eyes, but around the eyes really quick. One of the reasons why I want to get the eyes done as soon as possible too is right now we just have the skin's base coat done. Once I start actually doing all of the skin tones, I really don't want to have to try to replicate my highlights and stuff. What's going on, Liam? How's your day been going? Nice. I don't think I ever asked you what you do for work. If you don't want to answer on stream, that's fine, but I don't think I've ever asked. Okay. So, as always, yes, happy 4th. Or may the 4th be with you. And then tomorrow, of course, being Revenge of the 5th. And as all the non-nerds say, gotcha. Interesting, I've never actually been inside of an IKEA. Mostly because the closest IKEA to me, to where I grew up, was like 4 hours away, and then the closest IKEA to where I live now is like 3 hours away. So, but with that, we are going to bring out the nerd glasses again so that we can paint some eyeballs. So as always, we are going to go with more of an off-white color for the eyes. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be talking too much when I do this, because I want to make sure I do this right. And inevitably we messed it up, which is okay. This is why we do this early on, so that we don't have to worry about having to redo it. Which is something I wish I would have learned a long time ago. But I've learned it now, so. And that's one of the cool things about doing this early on, is it took basically 2 brush strokes to fix. I'm going to use a different brush though. This is one brush I haven't used in a long time, but I think it's going to work here. This is a Winsor Newton Series 7 miniature brush. Essentially it is designed for very small spaces and designed for miniature painting. I typically don't like using this, but in this case, I think it might actually work well for me. So we'll go ahead and put our nerd glasses back on and see if we can't give this a second go. Almost. So far, so good. Whew, getting in shakes. It's the worst part about doing eyes is when your arms start to shake just a little bit. There we go. Just one more correction that I'm going to need to make, and then I think we'll be fine. Take some of our skin tone, and to just fix a mistake that we made on the upper eyelid. One of the most important things to remember when doing really fine detail work like this. Number one is to relax, because tension creates shakes. Shakes are not great. But also, you want your paint to be fairly thin when doing this, because you want it to flow off your brush and onto the miniature. You don't want to have to put a whole lot of pressure down. Go. And we have the whites of our eyes all done. So we'll let that dry. And for now, move on back to our coat. So I do want this to be a fairly bright red. So I'm going to move on to a paint called Abominable Gore by War Army Painter. It's a couple shades brighter than Corn Red. As you can see on the palette, its color value is a little bit leaning more towards yellow than towards blue, or I should say towards yellow versus towards violet. Which will give it a little bit more of a brighter, lighter feel than our corn red, which leans more towards a purple or a violet. So as always, what we are looking to do is just to hit the top bits of her cloak. It's not really a cloak, it really is more of a jacket. And we're gonna leave corn red really only in the recesses of the jacket. Like so. And what this will give us is some nice mid-tone to start working our highlight up to. Because again, when we talk about color, we have three main kind of stages of our painting process. We've got our shade, which represents anywhere that light would naturally be shadowed. We have our midtone, which is the actual color that we want our paint job to read as. And then we have our highlights, which is going to be where you think the light adds a little bit more brightness to our colors. For me, red is one of the easier colors to do this process with. I don't know why, maybe it's just because I have more experience with the color red. But I don't really know why I find it to be a little bit easier to paint. Might be because growing up, my brother's favorite color was red, so I was kind of, I guess you could say, inundated with that color, and so it's what my eyes recognize. By the way, one of the things I'd love to try is a challenge that is kind of orchestrated and determined by y'all. What I mean by that is you vote on the minis as normal, and then I'll throw up a color wheel. You guys decide which colors I have to use. Now that will determine the overall base color. So for instance, if you choose yellow, I would have to paint some shade and luminance variation of yellow, but it doesn't have to necessarily be the base color of yellow, if that makes sense. So for instance, if you choose like yellow, aquamarine, and bone, or whatever, I would paint using those colors, but I could change up luminance value, shade, things like that. Still be a really, really good challenge because I'm using, instead of using like complementary colors or analogous colors or, you know, something like that, I'm being forced to go by whatever color palette y'all want me to. And I might do that too. I'll be like, okay, what color palette do you want me to use? Do you want me to use muted? Do you want me to use shade? Do you want me to use monochromatic? Do you want me to use a muted palette, a bright palette? So that would help determine the kind of variation of what the colors I do. I don't know. If that's something y'all be interested in, just let me know in the chat. I think it would be fun. And it'll give y'all a little bit more, I guess, say in what happens on the stream as well. Make it a little bit more entertaining for you guys. Because while I definitely enjoy this hobby and I enjoy streaming, I want this stream to be about y'all and about the mini. That's fine. That's why I said I would put up like a color wheel, and y'all would just like randomly choose, or I mean, if you want to do randomly, or you can intentionally select a color off of that color wheel, and then people would vote on which colors that they want. So I would put up like, these are the primary colors, and then I'd put up a bunch of like color variations and options for y'all to choose from, and be like, all right, these are my secondary colors, and then y'all would do the same thing. Y'all would choose which ones you want. Now we go like, all right, so cool, switch tertiary colors, and then y'all would select which tertiary colors I use. You can make it as easy or as hard as you want. But y'all would control the colors I use. And almost done this stage. And then we can move back to our skin tones. Not really. I think y'all would be able to do it. I think the complication would be on my part on actually setting everything up and getting examples of all the colors and stuff like that. So for instance, what I might do is I might, so one of my favorite tools to use when picking out colors in a color scheme is a website called color.adobe. And it's essentially a interactive color wheel where you can select things like, oh, well, I want a set of complementary or split complementary or double split complementary colors. You would choose your like base color, what you're going to start off with, and then it will give you bunch of different options as far as that goes. So essentially all I would do is I would go onto that website, pick out a bunch of different color values, post them, have y'all vote on them, and then I would just have to paint whatever y'all pick out. And I would include the actual color itself as well, versus like just saying this color and then leave y'all to look it up on your own. I would actually post like color swatches, or I guess digital swatches, or whatever you want to call it. Dude, this brush is looking rough. I don't know if y'all can see the tip of that, but I'm getting like a lot of split ends and broken off things, but this has been one of my most used brushes out of all the ones I've used. I've got another one that's literally identical to it that I really haven't used a whole lot, so I might retire this one, put it in the this is a old brush pile to be used with stuff like technical paints and paint where that I don't really want to get like my nice brushes in, like some of Games Workshop's technical paints, like crackle paint or neon stuff, or like heavy metallics and stuff like that. Which I don't use really metallics on my display miniatures. I mostly use them from like my army miniatures, or my like if I'm painting a bunch of goblins for a D&D campaign, I'll use metallic paint. But otherwise, I'm trying to stick to my non-metallic metal just so I can learn more about it. Even though I'm not the greatest non-metallic metal. What do you mean, did I end up looking up heavy metal? I mean, I'm a metalhead, so I listen to heavy metal quite often, but I think you're referring to something specific that I don't remember. Oh, that's right. No, I have not. During the week, outside of like my stream on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then like Charles Imagination on Tuesdays, I don't have a ton of time. You know, I try to fill my time with things that force me to hang out with other people, because I found that lately here I've become a little bit more isolated ever since that pandemic hit. So I've just been trying to force myself to interact with my friends and make sure that I'm maintaining meaningful relationships in my life. So chances are, unless I'm literally hanging out with you and you're like, hey, go check this out now, I unfortunately probably just won't remember to do so. So it's not that I don't want to look it up, it's just that I've probably either forgotten or didn't have time to do so. No, that's just the thing, is unless I am sitting there and you are watching me Google it, I probably will forget about it. And it's not because I'm trying to be a jerk. It's I literally just don't remember it. Which that's something that I really need to start working on, is like I have a really, really bad retention as far as like remembering things that I told people I would do. That are like one-offs. So if somebody's like, oh dude, you should totally look this up, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll do that, and then I'll forget it like 10 minutes later. I'm really bad about that. Well, I'm really bad about like remembering stuff like that anyway. Like you can ask my family if they show up here, like I'm really bad about remembering things like birthdays. It's not that I forget about the birthday, it's just I forget to actually talk to people on their birthday. Which is incredibly frustrating for me personally, because like I want to remember my family stuff. But I want to demonstrate that I love them and appreciate them by actually doing so. And I don't know. You know, part of it is, you know, ADHD people tend to have that in common. Me and my sister do, me and my dad do, but I don't want to use that as an excuse to not be able to just be better about that, you know? Because I think there's a big difference between a reason and an excuse. And I just want to make sure that my reasons don't become excuses. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but it's kind of where I'm at right now. So I want to paint her eyes green, because I think green eyes are awesome. Yeah, I know. And it scares me, because I know I'm going to forget, and I really don't want my mom to be upset, but fortunately it happens all too often. So we're going to paint her eyes green, and one of the things I'm going to try right now is I'm going to add a little bit of a dark green circle first, and I'm going to fill in that circle with the lighter green. And the effect that I'm hoping this will give me is it will man, I can't think right now. Wow, that's bad. It will give me some separation between the lighter color of the eyes that I'm doing, which is a light green, with the actual brightness of the white in her eyes. So I want a little bit of that separation, and so along with that we need some sort of dark green to go around that. So I'm going to use this dark green to kind of create my first bit of her iris. that, but we want a little bit more saturation, or not saturation, but opacity. So we'll come in with a second coat. I have to say, eyes are probably my least favorite thing to do on stream. Because it's something that I know y'all aren't actually able to see. I'm not sure what you mean by that. I know, again, I know with me doing eyes, it's a lot harder to see. I apologize about that, but that is unfortunately part of the problem with streaming miniatures and doing eyeballs. I haven't forgotten. At least, not yet. So, we did kind of those dark circle, the original like dark irises. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come in with the color that I actually want her eyes to be. And I'm gonna put a smaller circle just inside or a lighter circle inside the dark circle that I just put in. If my brush will actually cooperate with me. And then we'll come in with the pupil after that. And again, the only reason we're doing this is just so that we have a little bit of separation between the whites of her eyes and the actual green of her eyes. I have to grab a little bit of white just because on the edge of her left eye, got a little bit too much green in one area. I'm just going to touch that up, making sure that we still have a well-defined white of her eye. And we'll come back in and do, again, all of this correction. I'm purposely doing this before I do anything else on her face because it's going to be significantly easier to repair this now than when her face is actually done. Okay. Now we'll grab some black. It depends. I'm not a huge fan of a lot of horror because I just don't find it scary. A lot of the times the tension is just coming from like death, and I don't mean this to sound cliche, but I genuinely just don't really fear death as much as some people do. Which is a weird thing to say, I know. just a little bit of an error on one side of her, on the left side of her, her left eye. Got a little bit of paint on the eyelid, so we're just gonna go and correct that real quick. Really easy correction to do on this stage. Cool. So yeah, I don't find most horror to be frightening. Which again, I know is kind of a weird thing to say, but I did, at one point I enjoyed watching like the Saw movies. But again, it was less because it was a horror necessarily, and more that it was an interesting concept. Yeah, that's, if I had to say anything about fearing death, it would be whether or not it would be painful. So I would have that same fear. But again, a lot of horror films prey on the fear of death versus the fear of the pain of death, right? So it's more of, hey, this creature that goes bump in the night will kill you, right? So vampires, good example, or ghosts, right? And I just don't find that kind of stuff that frightening. I think if I thought ghosts were real, I might find it a little bit more frightening than I do. I'm not sure. But I feel like a lot of modern horror is more trying to jump scare you than it is to actually prey on human fear, right? So they're relying more on how high can we make you jump and how much adrenaline can we pump to your system in a single moment versus actually building good tension and telling a good story. I guess that's one way to look at it. For me, like when I watch a movie, I really want to have that story told. And for me, horror just never, modern horror at least, just doesn't tell a good story. And so it just never really caught my attention, never really interested me. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but that's kind of where I'm at. There. Oh, 100%. Yeah. Because I like to escape this reality, not fear it. Although I must say, there is a genre of sci-fi horror that I do enjoy. And believe it or not, a lot of the horror style episodes of Doctor Who have been probably some of my favorite episodes and probably some of the most scared I've ever been in my life. I think Doctor Who does a really good job of preying on actual fears that people have, right? So instead of the fear of death or just a jump scare, you know, they'll use creature horror, or things like, hey, this, like for instance in the Weeping Angels, they are things that when you're not looking at them, they are the most dangerous. Or there was an episode where the doctor basically had this idea that there was this creature that whenever you preyed on your it was like the perfect prey, or the perfect, like you have perfect predators, you have perfect prey, and he theorized that there were these beings that were the perfect hiders. And that they were so good at hiding that if you ever saw one, you would immediately die, because the only way they survive is either killing other beings or hiding from them, and they would prefer to hide. Which is an interesting concept, but the way that they went about it is that these creatures would, for instance, hide under your bed, and they would reach out and grab you. And that everyone on Earth has that same kind of fear and experience because of this creature. And it scared the absolutely living daylights out of me. That was probably, for me, one of the scariest episodes that I've ever watched, and one of the scariest, like, horror things that I've ever experienced as well. So the way that the weeping angels do kill you, but the way that they kill you is a little bit interesting. So the weeping angels kill you by sending you back in time so that you're dead by that time. So instead of being like they snap your neck, they just send you back in time 60 years, so that by the time that year rolls around again, you're already dead. So there's no hope in saving you. And it becomes a fixed moment in time, which, if you were a fan of Doctor Who, you'll know that fixed moments in time cannot be changed. And so there's absolutely no hope of somebody going back in time and saving you, even somebody like the Doctor. So the weeping angels do kill you, but they essentially make you live out your entire life, so far in the past that you don't know anyone, you're unfamiliar with the time, and you essentially live out your life understanding that you are not where you're supposed to be, desperately trying to return to that time, but knowing that you will never be able to. You'll never be able to see your loved ones again. And you're in a time period that you don't belong in. So that's the Weeping Angels. I found the concept of them killing you when you don't look to be more scary than the method they use to kill you. Because again, it seems to be kind of a decent way to die, that instead of just dying, you get to live out your entire life. You just kind of live it out in a way that's not ideal, but you still live your entire life. No problem, man. No, this is a 3D print that I did from a company called Loot Studios. I do a lot of Warhammer miniatures. In fact, I've got some on my wall or on my little display back there. But today we are doing just a cool 75mm Pirate Lady. I just say doo-doo. Ugh. I hate the fact that that's a thing in English. But you are more than welcome to stay, chat, just hang out as we paint some awesome miniatures, man. That's really all we do here. Yeah, this is a really cool pirate, and this is again, so the company that makes a lot of the miniatures I paint is called Loot Studios. And if you have a 3D printer, man, they are probably make some of the best miniatures out there. And if you don't, I know there are a lot of companies like WizKids, obviously Games Workshop, who makes a lot of really nice miniatures. In fact, actually, the last miniature, 2 miniatures ago, I think, so like a week and a half ago, I finished painting. There was the new limited edition series that Warhammer just came out from, or came out with, the Games Workshop just released. Man, I cannot talk today. That they just released as like an in-store exclusive that I was able to get my hands on. and I finished him. I didn't start him on stream, but I did finish him on stream because I finished the miniature that I was working on at that point before the stream ended. So, and I'm going to be getting Robert Guillemot, who is the Ultramarine Primarch, pretty soon. So I'm going to be painting him on stream as well, or at least having him as an option. So what I like to do is I'll post in my Discord a picture of all the miniatures that I have to paint in my backlog, and I'll let y'all decide which ones you want me to paint next. So once I get him in, I will go ahead and put him as an option for the next stream or the next miniature. So we're going to go ahead and start mixing up our next midtone and our highlight. So we've got Barbarian Flesh by Army Painter, and then Rosy Shadow, I believe it's called. Yeah, Rosy Shadow by Reaper. So we'll work these two in to start bringing up our highlights on our pirate face here. First we'll mix in a little bit of our, I guess you say tertiary, which by the way, just, I keep using that term and as if, I don't know if everyone knows what that means because it's kind of a $5 word, and if you do, sorry, I'm going to tell you what it means again. Tertiary just means like you have primary, which is the first, you have secondary, which is secondary, and tertiary is anything that comes after secondary. So tertiary colors. So I did my initial base coat as my shade, and I'm working my way up to the highlight. And I've so far done 3 layers of shade. Then I'll do a mid-tone, which is what I'm working on now, and then I'll do 2 layers of highlights on the face, just to give it a little bit of, not a little bit, but a lot of nice definition. And it will make, eventually when I start blending all of these layers together, it will make it significantly easier because all of the colors are close to the ones that are adjacent to it. There we go. I think this is looking nice. Again, what I'm trying to do here is I'm just trying to make sure that I get some nice shade and a nice transition between all these different colors. Like that. And we'll do the same on all of our other skin tones. So around her, I don't even know what those bones are called. Sternum? Yeah, that's a sternum. And then around her, like little area there. I'm terrible when it comes to anatomy. It's like I paint so much anatomy and I have no idea what half the stuff I'm painting is called. I know this is a forearm. So I need to, I've mentioned this a couple times every time I do a, I feel like I mention this every time I do a face. I've actually thought about taking, or not taking, but like asking my sister to teach me how to do makeup, because that would absolutely help in things like contouring and where to put shade and stuff like that on face. Yes, Stormtrooper. I am a nerd, and I take after my brother. For those of y'all, I'm pretty sure everyone here knows, Stormtrooper is my brother, so. But welcome, as always, to the stream. We're just doing a nice Buccaneer Pirate Lady, because that is what y'all voted on. Interesting. This is definitely an interesting concept for sure. Was it more of a horror or just a sci-fi in general? Or is it more of like a horror sci-fi? Gotcha. All right, so we're going in for our highlight face. So I'm taking a little bit of this rosy shadow, because the rosy shadow, believe it or not, is actually quite bright. So I'm using it to just brighten up my first highlight. And I'm also going back and using some of this beige color that we used earlier just to brighten it up and bring it up to that highlight phase. And here we're going to use it a little bit more sparingly than we have with our others. So we're going to hit the edge of the nostrils, very edge of the chin, on the brow just above, bridge of the nose, tops of the cheeks, and top of the chin, top of the lip, like so. I don't know how well y'all can see that. And I'll add just a little bit on her forearm here, just to add a little bit, almost like a specular highlight, almost as if she's sweating. So I feel like this Buccaneer lady has been on the decks, getting into all kinds of trouble. I am seeing a bit of a... Oh, this is unfortunate. There we go, that worked. Thankfully it didn't take off too much paint. There was a bit of a, support material left over, so I just want to knock that off real quick. I'm also going back with a little bit of a darker color just to move some of the highlight on the top of the lip down a little bit. And then just making a few adjustments on things like the nose here. Hey, I've got to be able to see what I'm doing. And plus, y'all get an amazing view of my hair follicles. Who wouldn't want to see random hair follicles? Besides literally everyone. pretty much. Well, I think that face looks pretty good. It'll look a little bit better, I think, once we get some hair done on her. Make a few more adjustments here under her lip. I think we went a little too dark in a couple places, so I'm just going to take a little bit of paint and make that adjustment, just to lighten it up slightly. And then let's decide a lip color. The 1/3 to the left. Okay. So I'm going to take some of my skin tone, add some red to it, a little bit more than I did with my shadow, and that is what I'm going to use for her lip color. The reason I'm doing this is if I use the same red and the same skin tone, it will help pull it in. Pull it in, I don't know if that's a word. It will help to kind of oh man, I'm blanking right now. It will help kind of pull together the lip color with all the rest of her skin, so that don't have these like really awkward lip tones. That's a weird thing to say. Or lip color that kind of stands out from the rest of the miniature. So I'm going to switch to my smaller brush so that I get a little bit more accuracy here. So for this one, we're going to use a 0. Oh, my head is in the shot again, isn't it? Oh well. Happens. There we go. Some nice lip color there. Already? Man, you're getting old, dude. But I hope you have a good evening, and have a good evening, or a good... I'm about to give up on talking, which is weird for a stream, but you know what I mean. You're right, it does. It's really weird how that works out. So I'm really, really happy with the way her face turned out. I think it looks baller. I think her eyes look really nice. So we'll go ahead and do the first highlight pass on the back. For that, we are going to use, I want to use fire red, but I think both of the fire reds that I have, I think the nozzles are clogged. Yeah, that one definitely is. And that one definitely is, but I do have a pin somewhere on my desk. But I am so disorganized that I probably will not be able to find it. That I could have used to open this up, but that's, never mind. I can just live life dangerously and open up the actual bottle. We've seen how well that's turned out in the past. Exactly. So we're gonna take our big brush here and just scoop a little bit out and throw it on our wet palette here. There we go. That should be enough for what I need, maybe. I'm gonna be mixing with another red, so it should be fine. So with that, I'm actually gonna take this color and just mix it in with my previous red to get my first highlight color, because I don't want my first highlight color to be too terribly different than my mid-tone. So we'll take our brush and we're just going to hit the tops of some of these. And we're not going to go as far down as we did with our mid-tone. We're just going to start working this lighter color up to the peaks of the jacket. I'm going to use my big brush here for some of these larger wrinkles, but then I'll transition to a smaller brush as I start getting into up here in the top part of her jacket. Yeah, I think my me tripping over my words is partly because I generally start the stream right after work, and in my line of work I am talking all freaking day. So by the time I get to my stream, most of my words are like, we're done. Well, if I drink coffee this late, I probably won't get to bed. It's ironic because I can take my ADHD medication this late and still sleep like a baby. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and transition to our smaller brush. But speaking of coffee, she hasn't been on here lately. Wonder what she's up to. So we'll go ahead and transition to my number 3 brush here. Just so that we can still get a nice coverage, but we're not struggling or fighting a much larger brush like we were before. All right, where is... Yeah, I guess she was, wasn't she? Again, that goes back to the not being able to remember Jack. What did I do with that red? Am I going crazy right now? I just had it like 5 minutes ago. Folks, this is why... Oh, there you are. I did drop it. I was like, did I drop it or something? It's one of the reasons I hate ADHD. Yeah, I don't think she was either. I think she hopped in to say hi and then left. Because she's got work and stuff. She's actually adulting, whereas I'm definitely on the stream playing with not toys, but pretty daggum close to it. But I'm talking with awesome people, so that makes up for it, right? Go. I think we're looking pretty good here. There we go. I've also noticed something interesting, that the more I stream and the more miniatures I do, the longer it takes me to actually do them. Which is a good thing, because I start learning new techniques, doing new and awesome stuff. Not yet. My sister recently got married, so it's possible, but not yet. So my brother is not married. My sister just got married not too long ago. Yep, my brother-in-law's pretty cool. Although he is from New York. It's the only thing I can hold against him. But he actually just graduated basic training and is currently working through officer school in U.S. military. So there is that. He's doing military police stuff. I think that's looking nice, isn't it? Yeah, it is. And as much as I tease him about it, it's not that bad. I have no idea. It seems like it's like, well, he left New York, so he was born. I'm not sure where he was born, but he was raised in New York. But he left New York, so he's not like he's not one of these people who are like, New York's the best, bro. He actually left New York. So. Yeah. But I don't get it. Like, so many people, I think New York is like, people who go and visit New York think it's awesome. And then there are some people who live there who think it's awesome, but a majority of people recognize it for what it is. And that is, it's a cool place to visit, but you probably don't want to live there ever. Alright, so now we're going in for our highlights. So we are just going to hit the very peaks of everything with this. We're not really going to want to do anything other than just highlight. Shocker, it's called a highlight. Just the tops of all of this awesome textures. There are some cool landmarks that are very historical. For instance, Empire State Building for the longest time was the largest building, or the tallest building in the world. It's not anymore, but it's still a very historic place. Statue of Liberty. Places like Chinatown, Little Italy. Just different interesting places to go. New York is one of those places that I feel like you could visit the world without actually going to the world, if that makes sense. Because there are so many immigrants and so many different cultures that kind of melded in New York. So I think that's why a lot of people enjoy visiting. So it's more about the history and the kind of idea of what New York represents versus the city itself. At least that's my guess. I'm not a mind reader, but that's just knowing New York and what's there. That's my kind of guess. It'd be like why people would want to visit Washington, D.C., right? Washington, D.C. being the capital of the United States. You've got things like the Smithsonian. You've got the National Aerospace Museum. You've got a bunch of national museums. You can visit like the White House, see where, the Capitol building and all that kind of stuff. So it's very historical. There's a lot of really neat places to see, all the monuments and stuff like that. You can go visit Arlington Cemetery, which I have. I visited Arlington Cemetery, and it's a interesting place. So for my Canadian friends, I'm not sure if you know what Arlington is, but Arlington Seminary is the National Military Cemetery, where it used to be if you were, I think if you served in like World War II or World War I, you automatically are able to be buried there. But other than that, it's like only people who've received like Medal of Honor, things like that, are buried there. And then you have what's known as the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, where you have a 24-hour guard on duty. Through rain or shine. And it's the changing the guard is a very famous ceremony that goes on there. And it's extremely reverent, and it's made to honor those who have fallen, who were never identified, or those who may have fallen and were not able to be identified. For instance, maybe they're on a mission where they, people couldn't know that they were there or whatever. It's a way of honoring the people who have sacrificed for the United States, but whose names are unknown. And I would encourage you to look up YouTube videos of it, because it's quite an experience. It's a lot different than being there, but it'll give you an idea. Not necessarily, so there are white crosses, but the tombstones more generally are like white domes. Not white domes, but like your standard like tombstone where it's like a square with a rounded top. But you'll also have some that are crosses, some that are Star of David, and I think too they have some for Islam too, but I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. It's been a while since I visited. All right, so that's looking pretty nice. So from here, next order of business will be the trim on the coat as well as her hair. So kind of looking, there are some spots on her face that I do want to kind of fix up real quick. Just I noticed a couple spots here that are a little bit uneven, so I'm just gonna fix it. And we'll take our brush and we are going to feather that out a little bit so that it's a little bit less stark. I think that'll work for now. We might go back and fix it up a little bit more, because again, it's just slightly uneven, which is bothering the heck out of me. It's just in one little spot too. There we go. That's a little bit better. Cool. All right. So let's move on to her hair. So her hair, obviously, I think I did settle on blonde. So blonde is going to be one of those interesting colors trying to get right. Because blonde really isn't yellow. It's more of a brownish color, like a light brown. And then getting the shade right and also getting the highlights right is going to be interesting too. So it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, especially on this size of a miniature, but I'm down for it. Yeah, I wouldn't mind going to Japan either. I think for me, the place that I want to go the most is somewhere like Greece. Because there's a lot of history there that I really like learning about. So, but for her hair, we're going to start off with our leather brown here because it's pretty close to blonde already. And then what I'll do is I'll take my yellow here and I'll slowly start adding more and more yellow to my brown until I get to where I want to be. And then I might throw down some gold color here too, just in case I need to add some of that. So we'll take some of my brown here and we'll just add a little bit of yellow, a little bit of water, so we get to the color that we really want. That's almost right there. So it's almost a mustard color, which sounds weird. And I'm actually really quick gonna look up a reference photo, because I want to make sure I get the color right. Okay. Yeah, we'll need I'm gonna take a little bit of beige and add it to this. And I think that is gonna be our highlight color, but we'll need a little bit more of this brown yellow color to come in. And that's about right, I think. All right, so go ahead, send it with this color. And regret may occur later, but we'll go ahead and use it for now. Yeah, I think Prague would be interesting. For me, I want to visit the places I want to visit because of history. So Greece, obviously, extremely historic. You know, with the Hellenization of the Mediterranean, Middle East, and India. Like, it's an extremely important event in history. Obviously, if we're talking about biblical history, Greece played a huge part in the spread of Christianity. If Greece had not conquered the world and the Greek language had not become so the language of the day, then it's highly likely that the Bible would not have spread as quickly and as reliably as it did. So Hellenization, extremely important in the realm of Christianity. And for me, a lot of my nerdiness when it comes to history revolves around military history and biblical history, specifically what's a kind of subsect of theology and history called historical theology, which is the development and study of how theology develops over time and how history plays into that. So it's the history of Christian thought, essentially, which is fascinating for me. But Greece played a massive part and a massive role in that. So it's like you take Roman roads and the Pax Romana, which is the peace of Rome, mix that with Hellenization, and it was literally the perfect time for Christianity to spread like wildfire. Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's one of the things that, you know, when I was attending seminary, that was kind of my goal, is to get a degree, my master's degree in theology, and then go on to get a doctorate in historical theology. And then I wanted my focus to be in what was known as the patristic period. The patristic period is essentially the earliest period in Christian history. So after the last apostle died, i.e. John, it studies from there all the way up to the medieval period. So it studies that portion of history. So we get a lot of early discussion on things like the Trinity. We get a lot of early discussion on who is Jesus and what was his nature. We get a lot of early discussion on things like what is the Bible and how do we know it's the Bible. A lot of fun, very, very, very interesting topic of study in my point of view. So, yeah. I think that hair color is looking nice. So, good suggestion, Calico. This is weird kind of. There it is. Got it. Gotcha. There's like these weird divots inside of the actual like sculpt where her hair kind of folds, and it's really, really difficult to get the brush in there. Give me a little bit more water because my paint here is drying up on my brush. Yeah, I think it's adding a nice contrast, and then once we start to add the gold trim, I think it'll cause that gold trim to pop a little bit more. I think it's a nice contrast against her a little bit more tanned skin. Yeah, I think it's gonna be nice. Now I just need to figure out how I'm going to. Normally on hair like this, I would dry brush for my highlights, but I don't want to risk dry brushing near her face, which I've already done and spent a lot of time on. So we'll have to figure out how we're going to do that. Again, like I mentioned the last session, a lot of painting is about problem solving, which makes this a little bit more fun. It's like, how do we get this effect with what we have now? It's possible. I mean, keep in mind that not all Norsemen were blonde. And not all blondes are Norsemen. She could be British. She could be Dutch. But keep in mind, this is also from a fantasy world. So she doesn't have to be from our known world. She could just be from somewhere in Faerun. I think that's gonna look nice. How long have we been going? Only an hour and 40 minutes. We still got plenty of time to figure out how the heck we are going to do this, these highlights and shades. I might just slap a wash on it and then go back with my brush and make sure I dry out my paint a little bit more than I did, and just do it that way and kind of like hand highlight it with not a dry brushing, but a drier like brush. I think that's one option. We'll use a lighter shade like the Reichland Flesh, which is a little bit red, kind of a reddish brown. That might work. Yeah, I think that'll work. So now it's time to do her eyebrows. Same color. So we're gonna add a little bit more of the darker color, blonde color there, because we want her eyebrows to stand out a little bit more than they would naturally. Again, this is where you really want your paint to be nicely thinned. You don't want it too thin, but you don't want it too dry, because you want it to run off your brush naturally without having to apply too much pressure, so you can be nice and precise, but at the same time you don't want it running off your brush, getting all over the place. I think after seeing this now, what I might do instead is actually use this pure brown shade. Before I do that, I need to fix something real quick. So I got a little bit of that blonde color on our eyelid, but I haven't done anything to the eyelid, so it doesn't matter. Take some of this pure brown and do the eyelids or eyelashes out of that, just so that we it's again a little bit more visible against her skin tone. That way I don't have to worry about applying like a pin wash later. Not a huge fan. It's just not showing up that well. Not as well as I'd like. So in that case, I might make her eyebrows brown and then just use the blonde color as a highlight on the top. So we'll use my uniform brown, which is fairly close to the leather brown. It's just a lot darker. But as far as the colors that make it up are pretty close. Let's take a little bit of that. I'm just going to very carefully paint her eyebrows again. Yeah, I think that's going to look a little bit better. There we go. They do make him very likable, and I think for me, though, that's probably part of the problem, because he wasn't likable in the books. He was kind of not supposed to be a likable character. All right, so let's take some of this gold color here, and we'll go ahead and start with some of the trim here on her coat. Again, it's a fine movie, and I hate like, I complain about it a lot, which kind of annoys myself when I do it, because it's like, people enjoy that movie, let them enjoy it. But at the same time, like, the inner Lord of the Rings nerd in me is like, why was it done this way? So, I don't know. Something I need to deal with, I think. I think the problem is I watch too much CinemaSins. That's my problem. If y'all have ever watched CinemaSins, it is hilarious. Sometimes they're nitpicky just for the sake of being nitpicky, but sometimes it ends up being absolutely true. It's like, why would you do this instead of this? And it's like absolutely right. Yes, I do. I've actually watched several of his videos. I'm not like big into his content. 'Cause if I remember correctly, I believe Metatron does more of the Roman stuff. I'm more into stuff like Shadowversity, which is just more general medieval period. Because when it comes to arms, armor, and stuff like that in military history, I'm more interested in the mid to late medieval period. And then, because I'm American, World War II. But yes, I am definitely familiar with Metatron. What about you? So like, obviously you mentioned him, so you're at least familiar with him. Do you watch him a lot, or is that just something that somebody that you know of and we're just wondering that if I watched him? Whew, don't know if y'all heard that, but my neck just cracked hard and it felt so good. Don't know about y'all, but like cracking my neck is like, especially when I carry a lot of stress in my neck, and so whenever I crack my neck, it's just like wave of relief coming over me. It's great. Yeah, you like cracking your neck, or yuck, you don't like cracking your neck? Also, I'm pretty sure if I crack my neck, I'm pretty sure y'all will be able to hear it because my microphone's sensitive enough. Gotcha. Okay. Oh, gotcha. I didn't even like mean to crack it that loud either. I was just like, I was trying to stretch my neck and it just went crack. Because one of the things I've learned is like I've got to work on relaxing my shoulders while I paint, because I started, the more I paint, the more I'm starting to get like a lot of pain in my shoulders and neck from basically tensing up my my shoulders. So yet another thing that I'm working on as a person. Oh, it will be the day when I no longer have to work on anything as a person. I can just be good. That's gonna be a great day. Well, if you don't like the cracking, why do you go? Because like there are several chiropractors, both on YouTube and TikTok, that kind of call out their fellow people about like a lot of the misinformation, just straight up lies that chiropractors kind of spread. Exactly, Liam, and I am looking forward to that day, to be quite honest. It's interesting. When I was younger, I was like, oh, that's gonna be cool, but I want to live now. And now, like, again, 30 years old is not old, but as I get older, I'm just like, you know what? I'd much rather be there than here. Any day of the week. But as Paul said, to live is Christ, to die is gain. But for your sake, I will live. There's still work to be done on this earth for Christ, and so until he calls me home, I will be here willingly, as much as I would rather be with Christ. It's interesting. We've often talked about, and I say often, I feel like I talk about this every single time I'm on stream, how much painting is like life, but it's almost like how much the whole process that I take in like my miniature journey, from when I first 3D print a miniature or build a miniature or something like that to the finished product, is very much so like our walk with Christ. Right? Starts off as a formless sprue or lump of or pool of resin that has no form. It's not really useful, but then I give it form and it then becomes a gray, unpainted miniature. Now I get my hands on it and I start painting it, and it becomes something new, something different, something better. And that's so much like what Christ does with us, right? He takes us while we're in our sinful state. When the Bible is very clear when it says that even our best works are as dirty rags before God. And because all of our good works are tainted with sin, right? And one of the things that I find fascinating about what Christ does is very similar to how, you know, I prime the miniature and I begin to paint it, and it continually looks better and better and better, or at least that's the goal for me. Obviously, I'm not perfect, so I can't make a perfect miniature, but the more and more and more that I work on this miniature and the better it looks, the more it looks like how I want it to look. Similarly, when we're saved, it's almost like God is priming us, right? So he's making us something new. So we are painted, but we're not yet finished. Throughout our lives, God is sitting there painting on layers and adding details, changing us to be more like himself and to be more like what he wants us to be. And ultimately, that job and that journey, which will end in a new heaven and new earth where Christ comes back, that process will be finished. And that miniature that Christ's been working on our entire lives will be finished and will become perfect in his sight. And not just perfect in that we are considered righteous like we are now because Christ died for us, but instead we will be actually perfect. There will be no more sin, pain, death, All the effects of sin will be gone. One of the coolest lines in all Scripture comes from the end of Revelation, where it says that in the new heaven and new earth there will be no more sun. There will be no more sun, because Christ will be our light. That's just the most amazing thing I can think of. No longer will we need a star to give us light, but instead, our light will be the light of the world, the one who died for us. It's going to be a great day. And it's going to be even more awesome because we'll get to spend eternity with each other, those of us who are believers. And the awesome thing about that is we will know each other so much more fully today than we will, or then than we ever will today. Which means we'll finally get to know why Liam's favorite game is Fortnite. I just don't get it, dude. Alright, so sermon finished for today. So just finishing up some of the touches on her trim here, and then we'll go and start highlighting it. But one of the things that this is doing is it's also showing me different areas of this particular part that I missed in the last kind of phase, I guess you could call it. Now I'm gonna have to go back and fix. I think she's looking beastly. What do y'all think? And by beastly, I mean awesome, not necessarily like beastly. Alright, so what I want to do now is I've got my idea of what I want it to look like, but I want to start with her pants, but I also know that I'm eventually going to need to paint the inside of her cloak, which is going to be difficult because there's a lot of weird angles. So I'd much rather get that done first before finishing out everything else. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to that. I'm going to start off with a dust color. The reason I'm starting off with a dust color is this dust color will actually give me something of a base to highlight up from. Since the color that we're going with is more of a beige color, we want to start off with something that is not beige, because if we start with beige, then what we will eventually have is a white, something that reads as white, because all of our highlights will have to be very bright. And so we start off with something that is not beige, but almost like beige adjacent, so this tan color works really well for that. It's magic. That's all I've got to say. It's not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination, because it's a lot of very tight areas to get into with my brush, and there's not a whole lot of room for maneuvering. So I know I'm going to be hitting a lot of the other surfaces, and so that's why I'm doing this before I move on to things like her pants, shirts, and clothing, other clothing. So yeah, we'll see how it turns out, to be honest. So obviously that looks super sloppy right now. I'm gonna switch over to a smaller brush. It's gonna take me a little bit more time with a smaller brush, but I think it'll be easier for me to get in there in those more inaccessible areas a little bit easier. So we're gonna switch over from that number 3 brush to this number 2 brush. Again, it's gonna take me a little bit longer to do, but it's gonna be easier to access some of these areas. What's annoying is this is only the first coat. Because the inside of her cloak has a lot of black in it, I know that I'm going to have to do multiple coats. No, y'all can't see exactly what I'm doing, but there's a little opening underneath her jacket that is allowing me access. Right, exactly. I don't want to be using a great sword where I need a dagger. And I think that will help me a little bit in some of these areas, but some of them are just going to be too inaccessible. That's where normally painting in what are called subsections, basically instead you paint everything before you actually assemble, is you know, a lot of people go to that instead of doing what I'm doing, and that is assembling and then painting. I think in this case it would have been a little bit smarter to do that, but it's a lot harder to do that and then stream it, because then I have to wait for glue to dry and all that kind of stuff. Oof, this is... Again, I love Loot Studios stuff. I think they make the best 3D printable miniatures out there right now. But my goodness, is it difficult sometimes. Right, but I guess it would be more akin to, why use Great Sword to open up a package when you have a knife, a pocket knife sitting right next to you. I think that would be the better analogy. So, Calico, I didn't, I'm not ignoring what you said. I'm just trying to think of a way of responding that is true to what I believe, but also respectful to what you believe. So I'm not ignoring you, just to making sure you know that. But for me, it's not necessarily what I find comforting, but it's rather what I'm convicted is true, if that makes sense. So for me, yeah, I absolutely find the idea of heaven and eternity with Christ and fellow believers to be extremely comforting. But that stems out of a belief that Jesus was who he said he was, and that the Bible is true, more than trying to find comfort in the idea of heaven, if that makes sense. So it's kind of this idea that I believe that Christ will return because he said he would, and because I believe that he was who he said he was. So I'm relying on the promises that he made while he was on the earth, the promises that were given to us through the prophets and through the New Testament prophets and Old Testament prophets and things like that. So it's, again, while I find that what I would consider to be truth very, 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 very comforting, it's more comforting because Christ promised that's the case versus stemming from the opposite, right? So like, it's not coming from I want to believe that heaven exists, therefore I believe in Jesus. It's more of I believe in Jesus, therefore I believe heaven exists. Oh, I'm I was trying to figure out a way of not implying that I don't think you believe that, but I was just trying to kind of explain why I believe that, if that makes sense. Okay. So the interesting part about this, the inside of the cloak, is that the inside of the cloak becomes part of the outside of the cloak on her lapels. So we're going to hit that real quick with a quick coat of our dust color. And there's a little bit of trim on the outside too, so I'm going to leave a little bit of that so I can add in that gold color. And I also should put her back on the holder so that I'm not grabbing onto all the paint that's still drying. Got these ruffles here, which we'll also paint the same beige color. Or I should say we'll start with this dust color and then we'll end up highlighting it to beige. And same with the inside of the coat, because the dust color is a bit brighter, our coverage is not going to be as good, so we're going to have to go over this with a couple of coats. So this is, even though we're still kind of base coating at this point, that's why I'm kind of glad I did the face first before I started getting into a lot of the weeds with the rest of this, is because it kind of satiated my love of doing detail. Kind of spread out the part that I hate instead of having to do it all at once, which the part that I hate, again, I know I've said this before, in my opinion, the worst part about and the most boring part of any miniature painting project is base coating. It's just super boring. All you're doing is putting paint on the miniature. You're not making any details pop. You're not doing anything interesting. You're not trying new techniques. It's all the same. Basically just coloring inside the lines at that point. I think I might paint her shirt pure white. I'm not so sure. Because again, I'm trying to do a little bit more of a colorful palette. So there are a few things that I could do. Like I think an aquamarine might do well. It'd probably be a little bit more muted aquamarine, just so that we're not looking too tacky. But that's an option. There's still a little bit more to be done on the inside of the cloak. Yeah. I hate it too because there are areas in there where I can see spots that just have, it's still primer. Like I just cannot get to it with the brush. And I know for a fact that's gonna sit there and bug me as long as this miniature is on display. I think purple would be going more towards an analogous shade, so it wouldn't be too much depending on the shade of purple. I had planned on doing her pants like maybe a forest green or like a muted green or something like that. So I think with that it would be a bit too much. So currently I'm going more of a complementary color scheme. So I'm going with the red being my primary color, then some shade of green, and then some shade of like aquamarine or blue. I think purple wouldn't be terrible. I would just need to figure out how to use that in a shade that will end up matching everything else. Why has my music completely stopped playing? Oh, because I don't have it on repeat. I'm pretty sure we just heard this song, so let me skip that. I mean, there are definitely other details on this miniature that I could do purple. Like I can make her gloves purple, or maybe make some of the accents on her shirt purple, but then the primary color of her shirt be white, something like that. I can make this pouch that she has purple, something like that. So I don't think I would want it for a secondary color, but maybe a tertiary color would do well. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to adding a little bit of bone to this dust color. So this bone is going to be my final beige color that I want for the rest of the cloak. But I'm going to add a little bit of this beige to this dust color to get my mid-tone. And we'll start adding this to areas like the lapel. And again, a lot of this is like I have a color scheme in my head of what I want it to look like, but it doesn't mean that it's going to stay that way. It often changes. So I'm not really going to do a lot of the deeper areas in the inside of her cloak. I'm really going to do the stuff that's closest to the outside and then some of the parts that are most visible. Because again, just there's not going to be enough access for me to do that fully. But I think there is enough area here to kind of sneak a little bit of highlighting in there. Dude, I like that bass drop in this song. Holy cow. I just went bleh. Alright, so let's switch to a smaller brush. See if we can't get some of these small details under her arm here. Just give a little bit of a highlight so that it doesn't look too flat. Interesting. Well, the brush is almost too small, so we're going to have to deal with our larger brush and see if we can actually get done what we need to get done here. Okay. Not great, but I think it'll work for now. And then we'll take our pure bone color and we will start adding in our highlights. There you go. So for this, on this highlight here, for instance, I'm going to paint completely beige. We'll come up and clean that up a little bit later. But then on the inside here, I'm just going to do the very edge. So again, we're not trying to get too fancy on the inside of this cloak, knowing that we really won't be able to make it look good. But we do want a little bit of dynamics added. There we go. See, that looks nice. Just having that one little highlight on the back side of her cloak there looks pretty decent. And we'll do the same thing on this one here. Just the top edge facing out. And then on the inside here. And moving to the lapel. And then finally, we are going to, and by finally, I mean finally for the coat, we're just going to do a light run across the tops of these ruffles just to add that beige in, but we're really not going to get to do too much detail on these or much transition between the shadow and the bone color here. Really, I'm just going to hit the tops of this just to make sure that we get that beige color going. Like that. I think that reads as beige. At least enough for our purposes here. Cool. All right, so next order of business, just do a little bit of cleanup on some of that trim, which should be pretty straightforward because since we were using that kind of beige bone color, that should cover pretty easily with a nice yellow paint like this. So it shouldn't take too long to fix some of those and cover it up. I swear the inside of this cloak is gonna be the death of me, man. It's just so many weird angles to get to where I need to go. Cool. All right, and then we do have this trim at the bottom. I was kind of not confused, but like conflicted as to whether or not I wanted to paint it gold, but I think we'll go ahead and paint it gold. We have to do multiple coats on that as well, so it'll take us a little bit longer than than before, but it's okay because we are trying to use a fairly thin paint and bright color to shade or to highlight a very dark red color. It'll take a couple coats, but it'll be fine. I definitely went outside the lines there, but that's okay. It's right on our shadow, so I don't have to really use any kind of like mixed color. I can just use the straight shadow that we were using earlier. Yeah, I like the way this is turning out, y'all. Again, I don't know why I'm not using this nice handle that I've had myself. It's like I have this, and I've been using it all night until I remove it. So really quick, the reason I'm using this, while this miniature isn't small enough for me to get like, normally you use a paint handle because you can get like cramps in your hands after holding a small miniature. And this miniature is definitely large enough to where that's not gonna be a problem for me. But I also don't want to be holding on to a lot of the paint while it's either still drying or not completely cured, because that you could end up with spots where the paint is starting to rub off, which means you have to go back again and clean it up. And for this color, we do have a highlight color, so we're not going to worry about that today. We'll worry about that next time, because I want to get as much of this base coated as possible. Yeah, so there is a place here that was going to start it, then Corona hit, and they're starting back recently. I went to one of those the other night, and we had a good turnout for what, you know, miniature painting is still a kind of a niche hobby. But we had, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people there in a small local hobby shop. So it's not a bad turnout for, again, for such a niche hobby. you really only have two types of people. I'd say three types of people who get into miniature painting. You have your people who are playing D&D and just want to paint their character. You have people who play war games like Warhammer or BattleTech or what is that game called? Anyway, so tabletop war games. And then you have people like me who are just kind of in it for the actual art. But people like me generally get into it through one of those other avenues. So I started painting D&D miniatures and then just got into the painting hobby for the hobby itself versus, like just painting because I want minis for D&D or just painting because I need to paint my Warhammer army. I now paint because I like painting. It was really cool meeting all the other kinds of hobbyists out there. There were a couple new people there who had never painted in their lives, and that was cool to kind of help them along, give them a couple pointers and things like that. I always love it when I get into a hobby and I'm able to help grow the hobby. So like it's kind of awesome to see the community. And I know I've said this before, and I'll scream it to the sky. I feel like at least the people I have interacted with in the miniature painting hobby, but it has been probably the best fandom. Oh, well, I just broke the miniature. Not much though, it's just this little feather. Broke off her hat. Easy fix. And it hasn't been painted yet, so no big deal. We'll do that, fix that off stream. Anyway, the miniature painting community has been probably the best community I've ever been a part of, including D&D and Warhammer. It's just been absolutely fantastic. People have been willing to step in and help, give pointers, advice when needed. They don't, I've seen very few people make fun of other people for being bad at it, and the people who do are immediately shut down by other people who are in the hobby. So for me, it has been probably the best hobby that I've gotten into, with one of the best communities I've ever been a part of. Yeah, I mean, it happens. You break a miniature here, you drop one into paint there. Just this one's for me, it's not a commission, which technically Liam's wasn't a commission either, but it wasn't for me. And I was just like, the ironic part is I was talking about how much harder I try when it's not for me, when it's for somebody else, and I just straight up drop it into a pile of paint. That was the ironic part, but not gonna lie, I kind of like that color. The only unfortunate thing is it's a mixed color, so if I come back to this color and I need to make corrections later on, or if I don't finish base coating tonight, which I'm going to, but if I didn't, it'd be a lot harder to match that than with a color that I just took straight out of the pot. And that's interestingly enough, I was never really good at things like color matching or like figuring out what tones were mixed to make a color and all that like color theory stuff until I started doing miniatures for other people who gave me reference photos for their miniatures. So like the Trials of Imagination miniatures that I painted, which I still need to send out. I've been super bad about forgetting about that, but they were a huge challenge for me as a painter, just because like I didn't design those, I didn't decide the colors. So it was a little bit more challenging because I had to figure out exactly what colors would help me get to the tones that their miniatures were using. So it was a good exercise in color matching and trying to figure out, like, well, this part of him is green, but for, you know, none of my greens are working, so, you know, why? Oh, it's because it has a little bit of red in it, or it has a little bit of, you know, a little bit more, it leans more yellow or something like that. So trying to match colors for me used to be a huge challenge, but getting the opportunity to paint the TOI miniatures has actually helped me quite a lot become a better painter. So it is great to have a really good community, because there are so many communities out there that are incredibly toxic, either because people want to gatekeep and stuff like that. Obviously there are those people in the painting hobby too. It's just that I find it's been my experience that those people are a lot more rare, you know, than in like D&D or Warhammer or any of the other hobbies that I've been able to be a part of. So it's, and I mentioned this on the last stream, but it's been painting and paintball are the two hobbies that I have found care most about their new hobbyists. Mostly because paintball used to be the largest growing sport in the United States, but very quickly plummeted due to some really bad press and publicity for some of the pro players. And from then on, like, the emphasis was on growing the hobby and growing the sport, and that led to a much less toxic community. There's still toxic people in the community, but, you know, it's not as bad as it used to be back in like the early 2000s. All right, I do like the way that turned out. So right now it's not as opaque as I'd like it, but that's fine. Once we start in with some of the highlights, a lot of this paint will sink further into the recesses and give us that nice shading that we're looking for. So what we'll do is we'll grab more of our green, because we are running out. If I can find it. There it is. I recently reorganized my paints too, so like some of it is just completely missing. It is one of them. I think esports is super toxic because it's almost expected to be that way, right? So like you go into a Call of Duty lobby and people expect it to be toxic, and so it is toxic, if that makes sense. Yeah, yeah. But sometimes people are just jerks. Okay, so there's a lot of like little wrinkles and folds in her pant legs. So this is going to take a little bit more precision. So I'm not going to be able to go as fast as I could with her cloak. Some of these folds are really, really subtle, and so I just want to make sure that I'm hitting all of them. Like that. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing too, like it's kind of it's easy to describe, but it's hard to explain, right? So like, I think there's so much toxicity in video games. Number one, because there are a lot of toxic streamers, right? There are a lot of streamers who are known for rage quitting or like, you know, like screaming at kids or whatever, or like being really rude or like, you know, stuff like that. And so people see that and, you know, well, these guys got huge being that toxic, so that must be how you just do it, right? That's just how it's done, how it is. And then you just end up with a community that has that toxicity just kind of ingrained in it. And there are obviously, like, there are people who are wholesome in the gaming world and try to be wholesome. But even those people are, you know, inundated with people in chat trying to egg them on and trying to get them to do things that, you know, are toxic. I don't know. That's just my, what I've seen, I guess you could say. Don't know if it's actually right or not, but that's just what I see. All right, so first highlight is done. I think it looks nice, so we'll add a little bit more green for our highlight pass. We're only gonna do one highlight on these, because again, a lot of these wrinkles are so subtle that we're really not going to see a ton of that highlight. I'm gonna do a little bit of edge highlighting on some of these sharper folds near her boots. There. And then we will continue on, just hitting a little bit, because we still want to keep the first highlight there, so we're really only going to cover about half of that original highlight, just at the very top of where the fold is. Interesting. Is that a streamer that you follow or just a streamer that you've seen? Gotcha. So Liam, yes and no. There were in the World Championship for League of Legends, they decided one year that they were going to show the in-game chat for between the teams, and it was absolutely toxic. Oh my gosh, it was so bad. Which is why you don't see in-game chats on the pro level anymore. I think that looks nice. I think there are like teams that are friendly towards each other, because obviously like it might just be in game like when the game is actually going on, it's like that. But, and they might be friendly with each other outside of that, but you know. Yeah, for sure. Well, I think those are her pants are done. I think they look really cool. I think her jacket looks really cool. So before we end tonight, I do want to see what adding the shade to her hair is going to look like, because I genuinely don't know. And I'm kind of nervous, so we'll go ahead and just bite the bullet, get it over with, and see what it looks like. So again, we're using this flesh shade, which is a lighter brown, so it should give us the desired effect of having kind of those brown tones that come in a natural blonde. And I think that is doing exactly what I want it to, so we'll go ahead and full send it, and we should be good to go. I just think she has some pretty pirate everything. I really like this sculpt. There's a lot to like about it. Like, I know, again, in the past I said I have a really hard time finding female miniatures that aren't overly sexualized. I think with Loot Studios did a good job of making her look beautiful, but not sexual, if that makes sense. And so that's one of the things that drew me to this miniature is like, yeah, this is a beautiful miniature, and they did a really good job of making the actual person being depicted look beautiful without making her look overly sexual. So it's in my mind literally the perfect miniature as far as that goes. I think they just did a stellar job. And of course, there's some really interesting details all across this miniature too that add to that. And again, I would encourage y'all, if you do have a 3D printer or if you're interested in painting miniatures, check out Loot Studios. Again, fantastic. I think they do. I've never really seen a miniature where I was like, that's a miss for me. Even the stuff that I'm not really interested in painting, as far as like thematically, they still look amazing. I might do with this what I was talking about earlier, whereas I'll leave the shade dry. I let the shade dry, and then come back and re-highlight using the same blonde color that I did earlier. That way I can make the contrast between her hair and the recesses a little bit more stark. All right, cool. Well, I think we got a lot done today. I think this could be one of those miniatures that we're really going to take our time with, mostly because there's just a lot of really cool detail. We might finish next time because really all we have to do are the accessories. So like the sword, all her leather bits, her shirt, boots, and then the base. We got a lot of the hard parts over, like her face, eyes, things like that. So as always, I will post progress on the TOI Discord and my own Discord. If you're not on my Discord, links down below. Be happy to have you. You can vote on the next miniature when the time comes. But yeah, we'll go ahead and end the night there. As always, thank you so much for showing up. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not new here, hi. So, but yeah, thank you all for showing up, and every time that y'all are here, y'all are a blessing. I really appreciate you. So talk to y'all next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful night. Bye.